keeping you connected and protected.
Welcome to DAS Talk, the essential podcast on distributed antenna systems and in-building communication. Hosted by Peter, VP of Gamma, and Philip Nicholas. This Gamma Electronics series focuses on emergency response and safety. Join us as we navigate the challenges of building effective communication systems for North America's first responders. We delve into the advancements in emergency responder radio systems and the transformative impact on new technologies. Tune in for insightful discussions aimed at increasing knowledge and awareness in the DAS field. Whether you're a professional or an enthusiast, DAS Talk is your gateway to understanding the nexus of technology, safety, and communication.
It's Gil from Gamma coming at you again with another great episode of DAS Talk. And we have the live DAS Summit coming up in August 5th and 6th in New Hampshire. No, it's in North Carolina. And so what we've been trying to do is to get some of our sponsors on the show, talk a little bit about who they are, what they're doing, their involvement in the industry, and what they'll be doing at the conference. So you can kind of get a little taste of what you're going to see there. And, especially with our industry, it's young. There are different philosophies of how we attack things. We all kind of have similar things of code compliance and trying to do the best we can to keep people safe. But there are some other little philosophies and things. So I'm really pumped today to have Adam and Andy on the show, because I just feel like from a go-to strategy of helping people to be successful, helping integrators to get better, helping to keep people safer in buildings. I mean, these guys are second to none. It's been really great to get to know them. So with that, I want to welcome Adam Dunnom, who is the Director of Business Development for Best Enterprises, and Andy Major, if I said that right, Andy, who is the owner and mobile architect for Mobilify. So guys, welcome to DAS Talk.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So Adam, if you want to get started, just fill us in a little bit on yourself, kind of your background, how you got into this whole world of RF, and a little bit about what Best is doing.
Yeah, thanks. So Adam Dunnom with Best Enterprises, we're I like to say a consultative distributor of mobile and data infrastructure. Have been in the data infrastructure distribution space for the past will be 35 years here this fall as a company. I've been with Best coming up, well, it's been 18 years now. And only in the last 8 years or so has Best really cannonballed into the mobile infrastructure space at the urging, really, of Andy. Just hearing the stories of some of the projects that he was involved with. Him and I have been industry connections for almost as long as I've been in the industry. And so the rest has been kind of history. One of the unique, I would say, approaches that Best has when it relates to mobile infrastructure distribution is intimately understanding the technology and the medium and doing the little things that go a long way. We all know IB-Wave spits out an equipment list. Oftentimes it's a great software, but it's sometimes, depending on the designer, depending on the clicks and what parts are selected, it's not always 100% of the bill of materials. So things like grounding lugs, things like weatherproof grounding kits, the sled, is it permanently affixed to the building? A lot of the different interconnects between the BDA and the BBU. So Best on the front end translates that design into their own sequential and segmented bill of materials that pairs very nicely for the integrator, the installer, to match it next to the IB-Wave design and see sequentially, this is the donor feed, this is your grounding, here's your head-on active equipment, here's your fiber out to the remotes, this is your IDF fiber, here's your actives in the IDF, and then from there you got to the lateral antennas. So that's something that we pride ourselves on doing on the front end, and then on the back end, we deploy sales engineers to site for installers to be able to make sure they understand the terminations correctly, read the IB-Wave design correctly, make sure the couplers and splitters are put on. Actually, one of our engineers, as we speak, is in San Antonio, kicking off 2 projects out there. So that's really the post-sale extra touch. Our job is to try to make it to where the install is very successful. The integrator, first time or 10th time doing the installation, is a successful deployment. That way, when Mobilify shows up to turn the system on, to do all the testing, things like that, it's a complete, ready, installed system.
Gotcha. Great. Well, welcome. How about you, Andy?
Yes. Thanks, Gil. Andy Major with Mobilify, mobile solutions architect, owner, whatever you want to call it. And we are basically the puzzle piece that fits into what Best does, right? So we do parts, smarts, If we're talking cellular, we start talking about relationships with Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&Ts of the world, and start brokering those conversations. And then we have an IB-Wave, a couple IB-Wave licenses that we are able to do the design for all this stuff as well. And then we work with AHJs on brokering those conversations and making sure we understand every jurisdiction's unique requirements seemingly everywhere we go, right? So yeah, we are the complementary piece to what BEST brings to the table. And really what it comes down to is what Adam was talking about, where IB-Wave is a good piece of software. It's not a perfect piece of software, right? The last 10% always takes up 35 to 45% of the project, right? And so what BEST focuses on is the last 10%. Mobilify is there during pre-sales efforts. We're there during once the W is on the table. Well, sorry, first we should talk about budgeting. We put the whole budget together. We can actually get a request and actually return a request for a ROM bomb within 45 minutes if I'm caught at the right time and I'm in front of my computer, right? So I've been in the contractor world. I know that customers call you up at noon on a Friday and say, can you have me a budget by 5 o'clock today? That's where we really kind of excel, right? So we work on the budgeting, we work on the pre-sales, we get into the project, we actually do the design, we do all the professional services that have to go along with that in between. Adam is and BEST is the stopgap between once the installation starts and when Mobilify needs to come on site to continue the professional services portion, and then we close out the project.
Nice. When you said 5 p.m., I'm like, wow, that's generous. I remember as an integrator, you'd get a call and it's like, yo, we need a number in the next, can you do it by noon? And you're like, well, I got 2 hours or whatever. Yeah, let me drop everything and see if I can figure out what I need to do or how to put this together. So yeah, and that's the thing. It was always like our piece of it was like an afterthought. Our piece of it was, we need what? We'll get it. We need this in by Monday. And you're just like, that's not how these systems work. That's not how this happens. Yeah.
And on top of that, talking about, well, do we budget for the worst case scenario and have antennas throughout the entire building? Or do we have some sort of grid test that at least tells us that we're only failing on these particular floors, right? There's a whole bunch of variables that when Adam and I get introduced to somebody, more often than not, it's a completely green integrator that is looking to us for all of the information to deliver a successful project, right?
Yeah. And I think that's what's interesting in our industry too. Like I was saying, it is so new, and you have people, you have the veterans, and that's what I'm always intrigued by is now you have the folks that have been here since day one that are, they're getting older. They're going to, move on, retire, do whatever they want to do. So it's like, well, who's coming behind them to kind of backfill that? And it's interesting because obviously competency is so important. We have so many people from Adam and I have talked about this before too, from all sorts of different low volt trades, or even other, maybe not even low volt, but electrical firms that are getting into the space now. And like you're saying, Andy, they're green. They've never seen this before. And that's what I was saying in my intro about kind of a philosophical difference, because some folks feel that, well, you need to raise the bar really high, and unless you get there, you have no business in this industry. But there's nowhere to really learn. And I'm not trying to do a plug, per se for DAS University, which is always something. But, there's really nowhere to learn. How do you, design these systems? What's involved? Working with the AHJs, all those different parts and pieces. So I just love the fact that you guys are partnered together, and, you could take a green integrator and, man, you're going to raise him up to that level of competency that he needs to be. And it's kind of to your point, Adam, whether it's the first project or 10 projects, well, you guys are incrementally going to help them get to that point. That's awesome. I love that.
Gil, I have never been involved in an industry where experience is so paramount over anything else. I mean, you literally have to have experience I've seen this before. I know exactly what's going on here, right? I've never seen an industry like this one when it comes to experience. And I know experience outranks everything on every facet, but this one is a different level, in my opinion. So Adam and I are involved in a couple of different fire marshal boards across the country. And one of the most fascinating things that I'm sure more and more jurisdictions and more integrators are seeing as time goes by is you have the AHJs who are fire-oriented, fire marshal-oriented, fire station-oriented, and then you have the radio shops that are completely and utterly just RF-oriented, right? And when you talk to the RF shop, in their perfect world, they don't want any BDAs in their environment whatsoever. They will fight tooth and nail to put a BDA in a building every day, all day, right? Because that makes their world imperfect. The fire marshals, if they had their way, they would put a BDA in every building to guarantee that they had coverage every day, all day, in every single building that they walk into. So you have two groups that are supposed to be working together for us to get to a common goal that actually have diametrically opposed viewpoints on what indoor DAS should be looking like. And we hear it all the time when we're on phone calls with AHJs and radio shops together.
Yeah. And I love the fact, well, especially say with something like the summit, you're going to have both worlds. You're going to have the AHJs, you're going to have integrators, you're going to have fire people, everybody in this room. And I'm hoping it's going to create even more dialogue to help improve that. Because, and I've shared this before, having been an integrator, a lot of times you feel like you're working in a vacuum. It's like, I'm trying to give you my submittal. We did our data collection. This is what we think is needed based on code. We're just going to augment the weak areas, and here it is. And then to get, you basically fail, and you're like, well, why? And it's like, let's do this together. Let's figure this out. How do we make this so the first time? Because I've had, AHJs tell integrators, no one passes the first time. Well, how do we make it so people can pass the first time? That's the thing. And that's what I love, I think, with your guys' relationship and this partnership that Best and Mobilify have, is to be able to do that, is to be able to make that better.
Well,
It's
it just
amazing.
gives a lot of comfort, especially for the people. There's a lot of integrators out there that have been flirting with the idea of getting into DAS or are nervous to, but they're starting to be forced to bid that portion of the scope. And it's just nice to have, a 3 to 4 stranded cord where you have the manufacturer, the distributor, the professional engineering group, as well as the integrator, new or seasoned. It's just it's a perfect teaming. And I always like to use the analogy, we all jump in the trenches together, and at the end of the battle, you high five, because ideally every install is going to be a success, whether it's the integrator's first install or their, like I said, 20th install.
Yeah, with the ultimate goal of keeping people safe inside buildings. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit. I know for the summit, you guys are going to be doing a class on converged wireless networks. So fill us in a little bit about that. What are you guys seeing? I know from my experience for a long time, it was, nope, you have separate systems, your cell and your public safety or any other RF system. So fill us in a little bit about what you guys are going to be talking about, or what you guys are seeing in converged wireless networks.
You want to go?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. I think that, to begin with, the market is starting to demand that, especially with the cost of these systems and with the increase of demand from users in the cellular world to also have coverage within buildings. It used to be that you would walk into a building back in the early 90s and not necessarily expect plumbing to be in there, and you wouldn't be upset if they didn't have a bathroom for you, right? But nowadays, if you go to a building and they don't have a bathroom for you to use, you'd be kind of upset. And we always joke that the cellular space is really the fifth utility of our nation, where it's becoming an expectation. And so then you have, the most expensive portion of most of these systems is the installation of the lateral infrastructure. And one of the things that Andy can touch on a little bit more is the conversations in helping guiding an AHJ through understanding the ways these systems can be completely separated in the head end and the IDFs, but then they through duplexers, through multiplexing, or just hybrid combining, and making sure you're accounting for band 14 to not be a collision. There's filtering that can be done, but it's an education process that we've found success with some high rises and some large profile venues where we were able to do that. And I think that we're going to start to see more and more of that.
Yeah. We will highlight this in the class too, but this conversation always starts with, it depends on the AHJ, right? If they're open to a conversation, if they're open to learning a little bit, we can help them understand it better, right? And where we run into those opportunities to have those conversations, we are able to help them understand, because I think what the common misconception is that an AHJ feels, well, it's a carrier grade solution and they don't care about the quality on it. But when you actually dig into and understand what the carriers demand for their quality of level of network versus an AHJ, push to talk is a whole different technology and data demand versus the carriers making sure that all the PIM and sweep is taken care of on that entire network, and showing all the data to prove that out, and making sure all the connectors are done to a certain standard, and all the jumpers are meeting a certain PIM, right? All these qualifications that come into play, right? And then you go talk to an actual radio shop guy, and they're like, that's well above and beyond anything I would ever require. So you help them understand that portion of it, that from a passive network side, that the quality of install, the demand for the quality of install is far above and beyond what normal AHJs or radio shops would require. And then on top of that, we will start highlighting and talking at the summit about how you can still install these systems together. You can have them be side by side, and you still have them be separate. The big thing that AHJs get all wrapped around the axle on is, well, I don't want my system to be contingent upon wireless, and if the commercial DAS goes down, my system can't go down. Yep, that's absolutely fine, and we will highlight and help them understand how you have that separation all the way up until what we always call the plumbing, right? The copper pipes or the coax in the ceiling. And the sample or the example that I always give is we build the system so that even if the hot water is off or isn't running anymore, you can still use the cold water because all the plumbing's there, all the active electronics are there. Now, if the active electronics for the public safety fails, yes, then it's going to go out. But if the wireless fails, if the commercial DAS fails, it has no bearing on whether the public safety still works or not.
So have you guys seen challenges, like you had mentioned, things like PIM, right? Mm-hmm. Passive intermodulation. Are AHJs open to it? Because, and that's the thing, from my experience, it was everything was segmented. You have to, and so even with the way code is, if they're on, I don't know, NFPA 1225 or what have you, are they, and I know in 1225 it says you can converge systems, but are you seeing that it is changing? That mindset is starting to soften a little bit where they're open to having converged systems?
I wouldn't say that it's necessarily that they're open to it. It's that they don't even know that you can do that.
Gotcha.
The education isn't there, right? So, they're just so scared of wireless service providers and that DAS in general. Now, what I will also say about combining networks as well, it is contingent upon the building itself and how it's laid out, and can you have consistency around, I can place 2 remotes in this particular area and we have 2-hour ratings around everything and all that different stuff too. But at the end of the day, it is not something where the AHJ is going to approach the integrator and be like, hey, can you also put a cellular DAS in this building and just share the antennas? That is 100% an education piece on the integrator part, going to the AHJ and going to their customer and saying, hey, I've got a way to solve your problem for X and Y, all while sharing the same passive network. Because customers will ask all the time if you can do that.
Usually the enterprise or the end user is the one that's going to drive that. And then obviously in the middle there, conversations happen with educating, and that's more done. One thing I want to hit on too is that they talk about it, Safer Buildings Coalition as well, the importance of 911 call ability, right? If you're able to make a 911 call and it's first responder, active shooter kind of a situation, it's very critical for that information to get out. So oftentimes when you have the conversation, you highlight, most first responders would agree that it is critical for someone to be able to make a 911 call. And the public safety DAS systems will not do that. That will not help a person on their cell phone. So when you can have the 2, it's actually better than just having the 1, for a first responder situation where people are able to communicate.
Yeah. And I wonder too, like to your point, it's becoming a necessity, the 5th utility. And I wonder too about, helping business or building owners to understand that. You're mandated to have this system. We did testing. We do have to augment the signal in there because of the construction, what have you, but also considering having cellular coverage. And to me, when I would talk to building owners, end users, whoever it would be, it was always like, to me, it's a 2-pronged solution. Yeah, we're going to have the public safety radio enhancement, but you also need to have cellular. And it would depend on what the venue was, because, maybe it was hospitality. So, of course, they would want to consider having cellular because, someone's going to complain on Yelp or whatever. They stay at your hotel or whatever happens to be. And, I can't get signal and their Wi-Fi is awful. So, of course, that kind of motivates them. But it's kind of sad in a way because it's like, well, we should be motivated by a bigger picture, kind of a little more altruistic. Yeah, there's a cost involved, but it's also the nature of our world that we need these systems in order to keep people safe. I
do believe that healthcare actually had there was I'm the name of the survey is escaping me, but one of the credentials that came out of that, or the survey answers that came out of it, was that if a hospital does not have good cell coverage, their rankings went way down the list because what else do you do if you're either A, in the hospital, or B, visiting somebody in the hospital? There's nothing else to do, right? And so it became a very highly sought after to make sure that hospitals had perfect cell coverage to get higher ratings on the rating system. And I want to say it was like the Joint Coalition or something like that.
Well, not only that, then the surgeons nowadays, the doctors are almost mandating it is there because oftentimes they can collaborate with their buddies from college or other experts in the field while they're doing the surgery or while they're dealing with a situation with the patient. So yeah, you see a lot of use cases for that.
Yeah, and even for I guess I don't know if you consider patient experience, but I did a lot of healthcare, and there were a lot of times where they would want to have a system because, like in the the oncology wing or whatever, grandma was going, or grandpa or mom or dad or whatever, and there was no way for family to reach out to their family members, so they could either say goodbye or you need to get to the hospital now. And that was another driving factor too. So a lot of times it is the medical staff, but it was interesting to see that some healthcare providers are concerned. It's like, I guess, that patient experience. And like you're saying, maybe there's nothing to do and you're there and you're just on your phone or whatever. But in the case where it's like it's someone's slipping away. So it's like they have the ability to be able to tell people, come say bye, or, you need to get down here now. So, well, guys, this has been great. I feel like we need to get have round 2 of this conversation because this has been awesome. I really appreciate the time and just want to invite everybody, if you haven't registered for the DAS Summit, it's coming up August 5th and 6th in Concord, North Carolina. And you can meet Adam, you can meet Andy, and just hear a little bit more about these converged wireless networks. And especially if you're an AHJ or someone who's not familiar with this, I think it's going to be really, really valuable just to hear what's out there, what the options are, that you can safely do this, that you can do this well, and, for the benefit of everybody who's inside that building. So, guys, thanks again. Really appreciate the time, and I look forward to seeing you at the summit in a couple weeks.
Same to you, Gil.
Likewise, Gil. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys.
See you.
Fast Talk by Gamma, keeping you connected and protected.